January 1st, I increasingly become more aware that another year is added to my life. Now, that doesn't mean I'm worried or sad or upset. On the contrary, I find that as I grow older, things are actually getting better. So, Mark Twain has a saying. He says, life would definitely be happier if we could only be born at age 80 and gradually approach 18. And I think, yeah, there actually have been studies that show that people who are older are happier. You know, that there's increasing evidence that there's a positivity edge as we age. So I am so glad that in BMU we have people not approaching 80, but maybe even past 80, but still have a heart of 18. And I think that's the best combination. And for those of us who are not there, we have something to look forward to be truly happy. So Happy New Year to all of you. So I came across this article on the web about the power of one word. So this guy was really tired of making New Year's resolutions and then breaking them. So he decided to try an experiment. At the beginning of the year, he decided to only choose one word by which he would like to think about for his whole year. So this one word represents what he most hoped that God will do in him that year. And his logic was very simple. He said that I would rather do one thing this year instead of doing nothing about everything. So during the course of the year, he found himself experiencing changes in different areas of his life related to that one word. The word became the lens through which he viewed his life. And by the end of the year, he did experience growth in several areas of his life related to that one word. So I thought this would be an interesting experiment as I was preparing this sermon. I have a bad habit of preaching very long sermons. So I was thinking, if I could just focus on one word, maybe we will get through by 11:30. So I wonder if there was one word that I could pick out. So I was not successful. I picked out two words. And guess what they are? Can you guess? Arise is one of them. Shine. Shine. Woo, you guys are so smart. For the beginning of the year, hooray. So I just want to unpack these two words and maybe give a couple of thoughts about them related to this text. So the text that we looked at was Isaiah 60:1-6. And it's a text that scholars think that are dated to the time when the Israelites returned after their exile in Babylon. As you may recall, the nation of Judah at that time was demolished by the Babylonians, and a lot of the people were deported to Babylon. And so they stayed in Babylon for a long time, maybe 60 to 80 years. But then what happened was that history turned, and the Persians actually then conquered the Babylonians. And the Persians were more lenient. They were less cruel, than the Babylonians. And they were more lenient in their policy towards conquered people. So they would allow the conquered people to return to their homeland and rebuild their government and their religious systems. So this was actually what happened. And so the people, the Jewish people, anachronism, but the Jewish people, they went back to Jerusalem to try to, rebuild their country. But when they returned, what did they find? They found it was in ruins. There was no wall of protection. There was no infrastructure. The roads were all bad, and destroyed. There was no central government, little leadership. And so they were kind of discouraged. And it was in this kind of setting that Isaiah said, "Arise, shine." And you say, okay, why do I arise and shine? Okay, I'm feeling so bad and regretful that I came back. Because in Babylon things were better. Yes, they were conquered, but at least they had flushing toilets. No, they didn't have flushing toilets, but you know what I mean. Okay, but Isaiah, he said, no, arise and shine, because your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. And I was just thinking, as Christians, we read this passage and we say, yes, the light has come. We have just celebrated Christmas, right? The birth of Jesus, and Jesus as the light of the world. The light indeed has come. But for the first audience of the Jewish people, they were kind of saying, okay, yeah, the light has come, what do you mean? Okay. And so if you read later in verse 4 to 6, it talks about, Isaiah was saying to the people, look, your sons and daughters are going to come back, and there's going to be ships coming, and they're going to bear all of these, rich things for you. And if you look at history, this is actually partially fulfilled, because the Persian king, after the people realizing, some of the Jewish people, the leaders in the Persian Empire, realizing what the situation was, petitioned the Persian king and said, we need your help. And so the king sent, the materials for rebuilding the temple. He sent Ezra, the scribe, to help with the religious reformation. And he sent Nehemiah to build the walls of the temple and to give political leadership. And so Isaiah was saying, these things are coming. God indeed, God's presence is here. God's light is here. So when the Bible talks about light, it often refers to God's presence. The presence of God is here. And so the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. At first I was kind of thinking, okay, when you think about risen upon you, okay, glory of God comes down, how can it rise? But the picture here is one of sunrise, okay? And so I've never been to the Middle East, but I understand that the sunrise is pretty spectacular and sudden. It's like the sun rises over the mountains on one side, and all of a sudden you see the whole city of Jerusalem sparkling with light. And so this is the image that Isaiah was portraying to the people, that God's coming is like the sunrise, and the sun rises, and you will see it suddenly, and God's presence is there. And indeed, God's presence was there, because there was help that was sent to them. So I want to kind of talk about this meaning of arise, one of our words, okay? Now, the common meaning of arise is to get up, to stand up, from a sitting or kneeling position. And arise can also signify action or readiness for action. Arise, let us go, okay, and do something, usually. You arise to do something, is an action. But arise can also refer to what Jesus says to some of those whom he had healed. Remember the paralyzed man that Jesus healed? Jesus said to the man, what? Arise, take up your mat and go. And so this arise then is an action, a response of faith to what God has already done in the life of the people. So to arise, then, is to respond to faith, to what God has already done to empower such a response. So I think it is in this sense that we find the meaning of the word arise here in Isaiah. It doesn't just mean to get up with your willpower when you're down. It's not pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, so to speak, but it is a response of faith to what God has already done. So for the paralyzed man, Christ has healed him, and in arising, he made manifest the reality that was already there. Now, what happens if the paralyzed man who was healed did not arise? He just stayed in his mat. What happens? Is he healed? He may have been healed, but he did not experience it, right? He did not do what a healed man is supposed to do. Get up and walk. And so this is a lesson for us. You know, God has already done things in our lives. We have seen it. Okay. So what is our response in arising? And so to arise is to respond in faith to what God is doing in our life and in our world. So I just want to share a personal story of a recent arising for me. If you recall, last Sunday, if you were here, one of the questions that we discussed at our tables was, what event has the most impact on you recently? Remember that? So at our table, we talked about the events surrounding Ferguson and the protests that resulted. I did not say much at the table, but personally, I was very much affected with those events. I saw, and it became apparent to me that we live in an increasingly violent society, not only our own, but in many parts of the world. These and other global events have given me pause. What are they saying to me and to the church? What is the meaning of these times for me and for the Christian community who claims to know Emmanuel, God with us, and who claims to follow the Prince of Peace? So with these questions swirling, when I got an email from a faculty member about an ecumenical march in Berkeley, I felt an urge to join. Now, I've never done such a thing, but I felt it was important for me to do it, to give public voice to my faith. So as I was chanting with about 300 other people, Black Lives Matter and people of faith respond, in the back of my mind, though, I thought, well, I hope I'm not on TV. Because my family, if you see it, what will they think? I was front and center, holding a very big banner. So I was not raised in a family where political involvement was a value. In fact, some would say that traditional Chinese culture survived because it was so apolitical. While it didn't make the news, I don't think, I didn't check, it did make a deep impression on me that this somehow was the right thing to do, and to signify for me an arising, to arise, to give a public witness of my faith and values. Now, I'm not saying that this is what God is calling you to do. What I am saying is